when we are looking at the tide, which is the larger index, which is the larger ETF or sector, we want to break that sector down into its heaviest weighted components and in order. The way we do that is we head on over to ETFDB, look up the ETF, in this case XLF. Again, this is the trade of the week from about a week or so ago. So following up on that short sell. And then I look at the holdings. And then I want to populate in order the names in the most significantly weighted names of that ETF, of that sector, of that futures contract, whatever it is, whatever that tide market is. I'm going to go grab the biggest boats and in that order. Of course, Berkshire and JP Morgan, they're big old ships, and then they're pretty big boats till you get down past Goldman, down past CME to about Chubb. Right? Then you start getting to smaller and smaller boats. Take that list and populate it here. That's step one. Tides, boats. Then you want to go ahead and activate from the Raghee.io folder the JT trend indicator. So you go ahead and load up that JT trend indicator. And you could do this on the daily time frame because we're pretty much doing it on the daily. So you want to look at the clarity of each one of these components in order of their weight to see who is the relative performance leader and who is the relative performance laggard. How do we know a leader? Well, if the overall XLF is heading higher and green, the markets that are moving higher and in green with an 813 or with an 821 propulsion dot, that's going to be tracking with the larger tide. And the bigger the boat, the better it is for continuation. So go one by one and make sure you're comparing apples to apples, meaning set up the time frame. The last time I was looking at this, I was looking at it intraday. So set that up and then put that trend indicator on there. And what it's going to do is give you an idea of the wave angle or how clear that uptrend is. And it's going to give you an idea of the organization of the moving averages of the propulsion that we watch. So if something is a laggard, it's going to have fewer propulsion dots. It's going to have less green grab candles. It's going to have more of a sideways wave. So if you're looking to be long any one of these names, you want to find the relative performance leader. What would that be? This is a pretty good example of a relative performance leader. That would be a pretty good example of a relative performance leader, right? So look where it's green across the board. In fact, it's more green. It's got better relative. It's better than the overall tide itself. And sometimes you're going to find certain boats are doing better. They're bucking the tide in some way. So as we talk about many times in the chat room, your watch list for buys cannot look like your watch list for sells, right? Your watch list for buys cannot look like your watch list for sells. So when I'm looking at every one of these, is my short, if I'm looking for a short, look at that red grab candle on Wells Fargo. If I'm looking for a short, would that be a good candidate? If I'm looking for a relative performance leader to the downside, or if you want to find a market that's weaker than, find something with a red grab candle on the daily. Find something that's yellow, or perhaps even red-yellow. You're looking for yellow or red. Red grab candles, red flags. That's what you're looking for. And that's how easy it is to understand the relative performance, right? So make sure you switch them over to the same time frame, just like this. And what you're creating is an instant scan across multiple charts that are weighted within an individual sector. We did a member webinar on this week before last, and this is what we do. Go right through. So if you're looking for a relative performance leader, tie up the time frames, sync them up. You want green. My best buys in the financials is going to be Bank of America right now or Goldman. So say the telltale flags. That's what the wave and the moving averages of our propulsion are telling me. And I can go through the whole list and do this to find who the relative performance leaders are to the upside and who the relative performance leaders are to the downside. USB, not too bad. Got some propulsion dots there. Looks a lot like JP Morgan. JP Morgan's getting a little weak. You can see the red grab candle there. Little weak. That's an interesting one. I like Wells Fargo as well. By the way, why does Wells Fargo look interesting? Let me show you here. Why would Wells Fargo look interesting? If I were comparing some of these, number one, yeah, the red grab candles here. But look what Wells Fargo did. And this is where you don't just want to look at the grab candles, but you want to look at everything in its entirety. Green to blue. Now, I would not call this a great switch candle because this is not a wave reversal. But look how quickly we stopped plotting yellow propulsion dots under price action. That's support. And transitioned to red hypersensitive 3/8 moving averages above price action, indicating this. 3 full candles before the red grab candle. There's your warning. Do you see that? Relative performance. So if I'm looking at something that I want to trade to the downside, Wells Fargo looks really good. Wells Fargo looks really good. JP Morgan would not. JP Morgan's heading down, and that's fine. But if you want consistency in your setups, focus on where you have a repeatable process. I would not call JP Morgan short a realistic, repeatable process. Not at all. Okay, so just one by one, continue to look for where you've got that relative performance weakness, where you've got that relative performance strength, and compare them just like this. Now, we're just doing an example of XLF, but we can do this with any ETF and any futures contract. You do the same thing. All right? Would Morgan Stanley be a better example than any chart that was printing consistent green grab candles? Again, think about a repeatable process. Absolutely. Morgan Stanley had blue. You want to see the blue shows you this shift away from bullishness. No propulsion dots either way, right? So I don't have anything in my way. I don't have anything helping me out. So again, think about those signs. Again, MS, WFC, better than JPM. What else is it better than? Bank of America, right? If you're looking to the short side, I don't want to short Bank of America. I don't want to short Goldman. I'd rather short the other names. And even though this is XLF, gang, think about this in any situation where you're doing this kind of relative performance work via these trade flags.